So, chapter 48, this is quite a heavy topic that is brought several times in Chassidus, and this is about the word Tzimtzum. Maybe you have heard it before. Tzimtzum, the translation is contraction. And this is the way that Hashem basically formed the worlds. Our world, the spiritual worlds that are higher than us. This is the process of creation. We're not speaking about the physical part of the world, but we are speaking about the possibility, the potential that there should be a world in the first place. And we are going to discuss all of these ideas in the next upcoming chapters. Chapter 48, I think also 49 and 50 is also about this. And it's a bit of an abstract topic, but we're going to discuss it, and it's very, very relatable. When Rabbi Levi who was the advocate of the Jews, when he received the book of Tanya, he started opening it, he read a bit, and he told the people around him, how did the Alter Rebbe, how was he able to put such great, big ideas into such a small book? If you take the Tanya, you'll see, very, very small. We have 53 chapters. Yes, there are 2 other parts, but it's also not much more. 58, maybe 100 chapters combined, and that is all the Tanya. But the ideas that are brought in Tanya, they're so powerful and so big. So that is what the Rabbi Levi Yitzchak said about the Tanya.
Which is an idea of Tzimtzum.
Sorry?
Which is an idea of Tzimtzum.
So that's connected to the idea of Tzimtzum. Yes. Okay. Is God infinite? We say Ein Sof. God is infinite. That's one basic agreement that we have to have for this shir. And what is the proof? The proof is that, again, when we speak about God, we speak about the Creator, so he has to be unlimited. Because the moment there's a limit, the moment you say he started at this point, he ends at that point, so he cannot create something. Our creation is limited. If you are in Israel, you cannot be in France. If you are in France, you cannot be in Russia. So for the person that creates that society or that entity, the world, the reality of the world, that has to come from a much higher power, and that will come from a higher power and a higher power until we reach the highest level of infinite. That Hashem is Ein Sof, or Ein Sof, an unlimited life. Yes, Ovan.
Not only
Tchila. Sorry? En lo hatchala. Yeah, you're right. There's not even a beginning. There are other ideas that also don't have an end in our world. What else doesn't have an end?
Pi.
Pi. That's a good example. So would we say that that's compared to Hashem? So Ovadia said that Hashem also has no beginning. Pi, for example, has a beginning. It doesn't have an end, but it has a beginning. So that shows us that it's not true infinity. True infinity is something that has no beginning and no end. And again, why are we so convinced that Hashem has no beginning and no end? It's because there's got to be a creator that's higher than the society. Once he's not higher than the society, so he's part of the society, he's not a real creator. A real creator is someone that could create this. The world that's around us, he forms the world. He decided exactly how the world is going to function, in what ways, etc., etc. So he's got to be higher. Okay, so if you define him as infinite at that point, great. So Hashem is infinite. If not, so there's a higher creator to that creator. So we are going basically in, we are climbing this ladder, and at the end of the ladder, the bottom of the ladder is our world. This is the world that God created. That's for sure limited, right? Limited in time, limited in space. At the end of that sulam, of that ladder, lies an infinite God. And we have to say so because he's the creator of the world, so he's higher than the world. What is higher than this world? Something that is not bound by the rules of physics of the world itself. And that is the idea of infinity. You could be at two places at once. For us, we cannot be at two places at once. Why? Because we are limited. But Hashem is not limited. He's above all limitations. So therefore, all the laws that apply to the world do not apply to him. Okay. And therefore, the question is, so if he exists entirely and his presence is felt in all the existence, in all the world, so how did he create the world? Let's speak about what was here before the 6 days of creation. There was no sky, there was no moon, no sun, no stars, nothing.
And Od
Milvado, there was nothing besides Hashem himself. So it means Hashem fills the entire existence. We don't even have, it's not like there was space. There wasn't even space. Space is, some people say space has no end, but space definitely has some kind of beginning. There was not even a space. Space is the idea of a limited world. But before space was created, what was there? By the way, this is one of the ideas that the Maimonides says not to discuss. Why? Because it can cause a lot of confusion. But in Hasidus, the Hasidus does speak about a specific point. And the point is to strengthen our belief in Hashem, so we are allowed to open this topic up. But what was here before Hashem created the world? There was no world, there was no space, because space is part of that creation.
you had an existence before the beginning.
What was that existence? How would you define that existence?
That's the existence before the beginning.
Yeah, fair. So I'm trying to understand what you mean. You mean that Hashem was that existence himself?
That we don't know, because Hashem was already covered it. The existence that we know of is before the beginning of that existence.
Right. And what was
Hashem already encompassed that existence.
Right.
Because we can't comprehend how large that is or who Hashem is. All we know is that it's an existence without beginning and without end. So you have an existence before the existence began, and an existence after that beginning.
Yeah, fair. And that is the world that we are getting to know, right? So it's a very good way to describe it. And let's call it a godly existence. Before the creation of the world, there was only a godly existence. There was nothing else. There wasn't even time. There wasn't space. These are all beyond things that we can comprehend, that we could understand. But definitely there was some kind of existence. What existence? The existence of God himself in his terms, in his conditions. So how suddenly, and this is the question that the Alter Rebbe is going to try and answer, how suddenly was he able to create a world? If you are present, and it's a godly presence, how can there suddenly become a world that does not reflect Hashem entirely? How could there be such places that Hashem basically allows sins to enter?
So there was perfection.
Right? And that's not only a question about what was the existence before and how did this world come, but even today, how could there be places that sins are allowed? How does Hashem allow such a thing? Not morally how it could happen, technically how could it happen? If God creates the world, right, let's say, we'll try and compare it to an owner of a business. And then, Yaakov, I'm going to take your question. The owner of the business, let's say he knows everything about what's happening in his business. Something goes wrong. Does he allow it to happen? Let's say he's aware of everything, like Hashem is aware of everything. If we speak about an owner of a business or a teacher at a classroom or a person that's in charge of a store, whatever it might be, he knows everything what's happening in his store. He's not going to let problems happen. So how does Hashem allow that? Hashem's sitting and take, for example, a terrible situation with the hostages. The hostages now are suffering in the tunnels, wherever they are. How does Hashem allow something like that to happen? That's an extreme case. But there are many other cases of injustice and...
What about the Shoah?
And the Shoah, for example. Right. We're not going to answer the Shoah specifically because the Rebbe, whenever anyone questioned the Rebbe about the Shoah, the Rebbe said there's no answer. And the Rebbe said on purpose. There is one person that he works here not far from here. And he has an organization that does research in the Middle East. So he has like geopolitics, things like that. I don't know exactly the field, but it's something to do with the Middle East. And I once went to put on a mezuzah in his office. So it's interesting because his family is from Hungary. And they also suffered from the Holocaust. And one of the things that he immediately told me is why the rabbis, they say that this is because of the Holocaust. That's because of the Holocaust. So I told him, I don't know which rabbis you listen to, but I'll tell you what the Rebbe says. And the Rebbe says that there is no explanation to the Holocaust. So he said, okay, so if there's no explanation, it means it wasn't right. So where was God in the Holocaust? Why can you still believe in God? So I told him, in Judaism, we're not afraid of questions. Which means you have a great question. I have no answer to that question, but I can still live with that question. So we're not trying to answer the question. We're not trying to justify certain things. We have a question. We don't understand the answer, but it's not an excuse to stop believing in Hashem.
Give an answer.
We believe, sorry,
Give an answer.
the Rebbe.
The question.
What was the Rebbe's
He
answer?
asked him, where was God? And he answered, where was man?
Yes, right. There was once, I think it was even Elie Wiesel himself, who asked the Rebbe, does he write it in his book? So he asked the Rebbe, how could you believe in God after the Holocaust? So the Rebbe said, in men, you for sure cannot believe after the Holocaust. God, it's a good question. But in men, you can't. So...
What you asked at the beginning, what was there before creation?
Yeah.
There was perfection. After creation, no? He created perfection.
Yeah. Okay, so it's an interesting way to describe it. And perfection, you mean that before the creation, it was only Hashem. It was only Hashem, so everything was perfect. There's nothing wrong. No problems. So then the question is, sorry?
What Mordecai said, when he said in the beginning,
Yeah.
Hashem exists to
Right.
create the world, to get out of what?
Tzimtzum.
Oh, so you're getting to the solution. That's already the solution. How did Hashem create the world? But let's still stick to the question a bit until the question bothered us, because we live already, so we might not think about it. But if we picture and imagine what Hashem is, we cannot grasp him entirely. But what we know is that he's an infinite light. He's a light of good, of kindness, that truly exists. So how can he suddenly allow some world to exist in it?
How can we say what we are seeing now, what we are studying now?
Yeah.
What is the roots? Yes.
Sorry?
What are the roots?
The root of?
What we are saying now?
What do you mean the roots? Of the Tzimtzum or of the...
Tzimtzum, or everything. We were speaking.
Yeah. The sources to the side? The sources?
Yes.
From the Zohar.
Okay.
Sources are from the Zohar. Where Zohar was a book
And
written
what
by
does
Rabbi
he take?
Shimon.
Doesn't take the source from anything.
So
From there.
this is that's it. This is what's interesting, is that the Torah was given with two sides. The external part of the Torah and the inner part of the Torah. The inner part of the Torah was hidden and was passed on from one rabbi to the next rabbi. We're not talking about all the rabbis. Only very specific people throughout the generations had access to these ideas. And that's why the Maimonides says, don't open this question. It's not for the public. Today, for us, we need more help, and we are coming closer to the times of Mashiach, so we are allowed to open this question. But the Maimonides says, don't touch it. This is concealed. Until Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was the one that actually wrote the Zohar down, which he wrote all these secrets of the Torah, and that's how it was passed on, not only Ba'al Peh, passing on the message, telling one rabbi to the next student, to the next generation, but there was a book that was written and was physically passed on from one generation to the other. Until today, we have it. Anyone can buy the Zohar, anyone can open the Zohar, can read the Zohar. It's very interesting. So the sources to these ideas are from the Zohar, but the Zohar itself, it's based on Masoret. That's why we don't read any Kabbalah book. Today, a lot of even famous people are into Kabbalah, right? Celebrities, they like to learn Kabbalah. They like to learn the Sfirot. We don't learn it in that way. We learn it according to the tradition. The tradition...
Feeling better.
Yeah, and he has a whole organization that he does with teaching.
Feel bad.
Yep. He teaches...
Renews.
Yeah, and that's what we only learn, what we received according to the tradition that is the right path, let's say, to these ideas of the Kabbalah.
I had his Zohar,
Yes,
and my Rav told me, burn it.
burn it, mamash. Yeah,
And I burned it.
yeah. Okay, so chapter 48, והנה כאשר יתבונן המשכיל בגדולת אינסוף ברוך הוא כי כשמו כן הוא. Hashem is unlimited. אין סוף ואין תכלית כלל לאור וחיות המתפשט ומיוחדת במהותו ועצמותו יתברך בתכליס הייחוד. Hashem is unlimited and there is no end to his existence. That's the idea of infinite, right? The same as, even we can take an example like a nuclear reactor has an infinite amount of energy. Or numbers in general, like you said, pi has an infinite amount of numbers. There's no end to those numbers. So these are, it's like a mathematical, any type, even just generally numbers. Any number that you would say, 1 trillion, so you would add 1 trillion and 1, 1 trillion and 2. There's never an end to numbers. There's a beginning. You've got to start at 1, but there's no end. So this is the idea that Hashem truly is fully present, or a godly existence, let's say, that was prior to our existence that we have here today. So he says like this: if there were no contractions, and then there were no barriers put in front of the light of God. So the world that we would see today, that we would live in today, would be an infinite world, would be an unlimited world without the boundaries and without the laws of physics. Why? Because they all come from the same starting point, which is an unlimited God. So if something unlimited starts a chain reaction, so the chain reaction is also going to be unlimited, the same as Hashem himself is unlimited. I'll give you an example, okay? The prophet speaks about Elisha Hanav. Prophet Elisha, there's a whole story about a lady coming over to him, telling him that she is a widow, she's very poor, she has a huge debt that her husband left her with, and she has 2 children. What should I do? Elisha said, you know what? Tell me about your husband. Who was he? He wanted to know, is she worthy of his blessing? So she tells Elisha, my husband was, if I'm not mistaken, his name was Ovadia. He was the person in charge of King Ahav's palace, his house, everything. And Ovadia was a righteous person. He was God-fearing, and he was a big, big Baal Chesed. That's what it says. And we know King Achav had his wife, Isabel, was very, very cruel to the righteous people and specifically to the prophets. She chased them, she killed a lot of them, and during that time, Ovadia risked his life and hid a lot of these prophets. And that's how he became a big, he became, what's the word? He owed a lot of money to people because he had to get the prophets food and clothing, etc. So he owed people a lot of money. So the widow is coming now to Prophet Elisha, telling Prophet Elisha, please help me with my situation. So the Prophet Elisha said, no problem. What do you have at home? And she says, all I have at home is 1 small jar of oil, and that's it. So Elisha says, listen, go out to your neighbors, borrow from them jars, vessels, bring as much as you can, close your door, and start pouring from that little jar, start pouring oil into all of the vessels. So the widow hears this bracha. She goes, she brings fills the entire house with empty vessels. And when there were no more, she pours, of course, the oil. And when there were no more vessels empty, the blessing stopped, the bracha stopped. So here we go. This is another idea of what was the exact blessing of the Navi Elisha. And with this oil, she was able to live for the rest of her life, pay the debts, pay everything, and she lived off the oil. So here we see something interesting, that the oil was unlimited. It did not stop. You know that there was the Baba Sali, the holy Baba Sali. He used to give people blessings, and he used to pour them arak. Arak is like it's like vodka. It's a bit it's sweeter, right? It's like it has the flavor of licorice. Licorice, yes. So in Morocco they used to anise, right? And it was a common drink that, like in Russia, they had vodka. So in Morocco they had arak, and they have it also in Israel. So the Baba Sali used to give out arak to people and bless them. And what they say, the Baba Sali covered the bottle of arak with a handkerchief, and he used to pour arak way more than what the bottle contained. So that's from the holy Baba Sali. He was in Netivot. So, sorry, you went there? To his cave. Very nice, yeah. So the Baba Sali was something special. Yeah.
You know that the Hamas arrived there, remember?
I heard that story. Yeah, I heard that story. I'm looking for a source that, yeah, Netivot is very close. You see on the map, if I'm not mistaken, it's even closer to Gaza than than Ofakim, if I'm not mistaken. So like they Shderot, Netivot, Ofakim, and they came to Ofakim, but Netivot they did not enter. So they tried to enter it, but they ran away or something like that. So that's the city of the Baba Sali, yeah. The city of the Baba Sali.
Yes or no?
Yeah.
The Abadi you're talking about is the same as who wrote the book.
I don't think so.
The same, no?
As the prophet.
It's different. If I'm not mistaken, it's a different, a different time also. It's a different time in history. So, so this is the story of the prophet Elisha. And here we get a glimpse to the idea of infinity. This is an example where we could see that, yes, there are things that are infinite in life. Where else can you find Ein Sof, infinity, maybe in your life, in things around the world? Does anyone have an idea? Ashley Mazel. He always, yeah.
Always more.
Yeah.
Cheap.
By the way, the Rabbi opened this question as a child. The Rabbi spoke about this question at, I think it was a Shabbos table with his family in Ukraine. Where can we see the parts in the world where God is infinite? Even today. Because we'll see that God basically put some kind of barrier to stop this Ein Sof, this unlimited amount of light. But there still must be some kind of remains left. Think about it.
What about the sky?
So that's a very good example. So, and specifically within the skies, Hasidus speaks about the planets and the sky itself. Because of the idea that it seems like there's no end. Not only that, but the stars and the planets, they are as strong as the day that they were created. That's a sign that there is something that's unlimited. Day one is like day 1 million. He's unlimited. For him, there's no day one and day two. And the sun has the same, it's the same planet.
It cannot be something infinite.
So it's not pure infinity.
Okay.
Not pure infinity. Because
and who ends off? It's only him.
It's only him, right. But the sun reflects this idea of such a strong and powerful existence that has the leftovers of infinity in it.
But
And I'll give you another example. Yes,
Hashem died, so
immediately. Yeah. I'll give you another example, and that's the idea of reproducing. The idea that mankind can reproduce, and not only mankind, that has to do with the idea that Hashem is unlimited. Otherwise, there should be a beginning and there should be an end to every single thing. But where does this idea of reproducing come from? That is part of the powers of Ein Sof, of Hashem himself. So there are definitely certain signs and certain ideas that we can still see the unlimited hand of Hashem. Let's see from that point onwards. Now, what we've got to understand is, so if Hashem is unlimited, how did he suddenly create limited worlds? This is a different thing. Okay? And I'll give you another example. Let's say there's a charismatic person. Charismatic person walks into the room. They say that he fills the room with his existence. with his presence, right? So let's say the president of the United States would walk into the room.
And what do you laugh?
So whatever your opinion is about him, he has a presence. He has a metziut, right? He comes with, let's say, all of his convoys. So of course he doesn't only fill the presence of the room, the space of the room, but he fills the entire city. And when they came, I think a few years ago, they had a whole. They come once every 2, 3, 4 years. So yeah, so the entire city is blocked off, and everyone feels that he's here. That's a parable to understand the idea of Hashem filling the world with his presence, or filling the existence with his presence. And that was the existence before our existence that we recognize today, like Mordechai said at the beginning. So this is very interesting. Imagine the President of the United States walking in, or 4 presidents of the United States walking in, right? Okay, so you can imagine Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, and Biden walking together to this small room at once. They fill the room with their presence. You won't notice anything else, right? It's like going to a show or to a play that you like very much, and then someone's going to ask you afterwards, do you remember what color was your seat? Was it red? Was it green? Was it blue? You don't remember at all. Why? Because the players on the stage, on the field, on the court, whatever it is, they fill with their presence the entire existence. You don't notice anything else. So if Hashem fills this world with his existence, how could we recognize ourselves? Why are we speaking about ourselves and not speaking about him? Isn't he unlimited? Isn't he greater than 4 presidents of the United States combined?
You can see the president, you can see him.
Very good. Why can't we see him? How did this happen that suddenly we cannot see him? He's definitely here. He created all of this.
So
He does not disappear. Right?
So he decided.
So he decided. What is the process of that decision? This is, that's the result that we have. The process is Tzimtzum, contraction. So for Hashem, like you said, that we cannot see him. And you're right, we cannot see him. That's why we don't speak about him. But why can't we see him? Or why can't we feel him? Never mind seeing him. Maybe we could feel someone, like we could feel other people that we love. They don't have to be here in front of us. But you connect to him, you think about him, and he fills the room. You don't pay attention to anything else, right? Someone that you love, someone that you appreciate, he fills the existence. Hashem used a very, very powerful tool that is called contraction. Contraction is the idea of Tzimtzum, being there and not being there, giving room and space to others, allowing others to express themselves. And this is a very powerful tool that is used in order to stop the influence of his infinity. In order for him not to nullify the entire existence that we have here in the world, he had to use some kind of powerful tool. Otherwise, we would be all nullified. It would be like as if we are close to the sun. Why can't we land on the sun? Sometime there was it's a joke, of course. I don't know exactly the whole thing, but someone asked, well, why can't we land on the sun? Of course, because it's too hot. What about the nighttime? At night, maybe it's so Hashem would be like the sun. He's much more than the sun. So he would nullify us in one moment. But nevertheless, he uses this powerful tool like a curtain in front of the sun. And that's why we are in the exact spot and point not to be burnt by the sun and not to freeze to death. So Hashem built this specific curtain, we could call it, in order to prevent his great light from filling the entire existence in the way that we feel it, and therefore we feel also nullified, that we have no self-existence. So it's like the 4 presidents of the United States walking into a room, but they walk, let's say, here into the room, and they say, you know what, we want to hear what's going on, we want to discuss with you what you are interested in. That is the point of contraction, where they don't want their existence to be filled with their presence, rather they prefer hearing the other, right? And here's a story. So that is the real chachma, or the real tool that Hashem used in order to say, you know what, your words do matter. You are reliable. I want to hear what you have to say. You are important to me. Before that, it's like this endless jar of oil. An endless jar of oil it's like oil's not going to be worth anything, because you've got as much as you want. There's the story, the famous tale of the Golem Miprag. The Golem Miprag was, according to actually a few sources in Jewish history, is that this is approximately 400 years ago in the city of Prague, that the Jews used to suffer from alilot dam. Alilot dam were basically false accusations, and that people used to say that Jews use blood for their matzah before Pesach, even though the Torah itself says that you're not allowed to use blood at all, and it's a prohibition. But they said, no, Jews use blood for Pesach. By the way, this is one of the hardest things, and this false accusation lasted until 100 years ago. They still used it in Russia, and even today they still use it, not officially, but they still speak about it. In Russia, there was the Baileys trials. This was, if I'm not mistaken, 100 years ago. A bit more than 100 years. And there was in Damascus, if I'm not mistaken, that was during the times of Montefiore. So this false accusation reminds us of what's happening today, because we all know that it's fake. We all know that it's a lie. The Torah itself says you're not allowed to eat blood. So why would we go and put matzah with blood? But it's like today that they say that we are committing genocide, and everyone knows that it's wrong, but you cannot, it's the hardest thing to fight is something that is a total lie. You cannot bring proof against a total lie. It's hard. And the moment you start, you're finding yourself trying to prove that there's no genocide, you're already in the schmutz. It's like there's nothing much to debate over here. There's nothing to prove. It's all it's happening or it's not happening. And you know what? Once something is a lie, it's very, very hard to fight against when someone is saying clearly out loud and clear that you're doing something. You know, and everyone, we could all experience it. The hardest thing to protect yourself when someone accuses you for doing something you did not do at all. If it's something you did, you have something you didn't. Like, how am I going to get out of it? So the Golem Miprag, created by the Maharal, the book of Yetzirah, the book of creation. It's a Kabbalic book, a very ancient book. And he created the Golem basically for one purpose, to protect the Jews. And he had a condition, because the Golem used to live in his house, and he told his wife, don't give him any tasks to do at home. He's not here to clean. He's not here to go shopping. He's not here for anything like that. He has one mission, to go and to protect Jews. And the stories are that he formed him. He took mud and he created he was tall, created him with his son, with his student. They surrounded him. That's the book of Yetzirah, the book of creation. He used that book in order to create. It's interesting because there is, if you go to Prague today, which Prague is one of the only cities in Europe that the Jewish area...
No, yeah, truly.
Exactly. So The Jewish quarter over there stayed, remained. The Nazis did not destroy it. They wanted to make a museum there to show how Jewish life used to be. Yimach Shmam. And one of the shuls there is called the Altnai Shul, which is the old new shul. And according to tradition, up there's a ladder. I visited there once, but you don't go up the ladder. You cannot go up the ladder. And the roof, that's where they say that the Golani Prague is.
And what the tent on the Shabbos minyan?
Oh, wow.
It was only
But downstairs.
Yes. There was only 6 people from Prague,
Yeah,
and they were from the Israeli embassy consulate.
yeah.
Then there were a few travelers.
Uh-huh. And when was this? How many years ago?
15 years ago.
50.
15.
Oh, 50. Okay. So, yeah, they have also a Chabad house over there.
I ate reindeer.
Sorry?
I ate reindeer
There?
in the Chabad restaurant.
In the Chabad restaurant. Oh, very nice.
Reindeer. It's not good, but I was curious.
Yeah, so they have their Chabad house and they have a restaurant. Yeah. It's a very, very interesting place. And over there, they say, according to the tradition, and the Rabbi Rayatz, the previous Rabbi, actually visited there. I don't think he went up, but there's a whole story. I've got to clarify that story as well.
According to family stories, my wife's father is descended from the Altoids.
Sorry, he is?
My wife's father
Yeah.
is descended from the Altoids. Yeah.
From the Altnois.
Yeah.
And the Altnois, they come from Prague,
Yeah.
descendants of the Maharal, or just the people that lived there.
I'm not sure.
Interesting.
They said the Rebbe comes from
The Rebbe comes from the Maharal. The Maharal, Rabbi Yehuda Levi. He was from traveling.
Love.
Sorry?
Love.
Okay. So this is a bit about the Maharal himself. And by the way, the Tanya is based on the Maharal's teachings. The Maharal has a lot of teachings that are close to Chassidut. So the beginning, the seeds of Chassidut start at the Maharal's teachings. So the golem was created, and one of the stories is that one day the Rebbetzin, the wife of the Maharal, needed fish for Shabbos. And there was no fish in the market, so she tells the golem she wanted fish. She tells the golem, I know that this is not your job, but please go get for me fish. So he goes and he's there, and he's sitting there, and she has to go to the river to find him, and he has a whole net full of fish, and he's still fishing because he didn't know when to stop. Or another time she sent him to bring water. He goes, he brings water, and suddenly she sees the house is flooded because he was going schlepping water, pouring it, and then again and again and again. So this is just a joke about what infinity is. But sometimes, yes, there's the idea of stopping is what we call Tzimtzum. And this is what the Alter Rebbe says. Without this Tzimtzum, so the Hishtalshelus, the chain reaction of creating the world, there would not be any end. And not only that, but even Olam Haba, even Gan Eden, even the angels, they would be created in a different way. In an infinite way, in a way that there were no limits and no boundaries. Today we know, even angels, each angel has his nature, has his mission that he's going to carry out. Each tzaddik has his own style. Olam Haba. If you go into Olam Haba, there are different compartments over there. There are different levels, each one according to the level that's related to it.
First class.
Yeah. And there are many, many levels within first class itself. This is all limits. And this could not come directly from Hashem himself. For this, Hashem needed to contract himself. And I'll give you another example. Is a person that's a genius person, is he also guaranteed to be a good teacher?
No.
No, you say no. Could we agree on that?
Yeah,
Yeah. He's not guaranteed to be a good teacher, even though he knows much more than all the teachers in the school combined. But there's something else that he might be missing or that he needs. Shammai, okay, that's an interesting example. We see that within teaching. Yes.
If you read the book, The Rebbe on the Rav,
Right.
he writes about it, maybe he even said it to Rav. But I think it was the author. The Rebbe can transmit Hasidim to Hasidim, and maybe even to the Rav. The Rav cannot transmit it to others.
To others. Yeah, that's it. One of the key ideas of someone that helps others, someone that listens to others, that gives advice to someone else, is that he could relate to the other person.
Empathy.
Empathy, exactly. If he cannot relate to someone else, he cannot help him as well. If you cannot understand, if you cannot even show that you relate to him, so a good teacher is a teacher that could relate to the students. He doesn't have to be a genius at all. And a person that's a genius and knows all the mathematical equations, it's not a guaranteed that he's going to be a good teacher. He has to relate to the student. That is most important. We read it, yeah.
Sorry, then you have to presume about you know everything, then you have to build it into
Contract, exactly. That's contraction. Contraction is allowing others to exist as well. Hashem allows us to exist, and that's why we are here. So he contracts his great light, his infinite light, in order for us to be able to live and not to be nullified. A teacher contracts most of his knowledge in order to give the drops of knowledge that he does have to the students, and in order for them to truly accept it in a nice way.
There's a lot of stories they see in the news.
Yeah.
And you have an interest, I think, about a janitor or a custodian of some sort like an elementary school.
Yeah.
It had most effect on the kids, teaching them life lessons and things like that, more so than the real teachers.
Interesting.
He's a simple person. He's
Yeah.
not an expert in anything,
Yeah.
but this person has more effect on the children than the teachers that are teaching science or whatever it is.
Yes, fair. Yes, fair.
I just saw a story about that the other day.
Yes, fair. Yeah, it's a good point. There was once, this is one of the parables of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov. There was once a king that went cuckoo. He went a bit crazy. He decided that from now onwards, he's a chicken. Yeah. He went under the table. He started to eat only crumbs. He wasn't prepared to eat anything else. He did not speak. He did not talk. And he used to just act exactly like a chicken. They brought doctors, they brought psychologists, they brought everyone that they could to try and help this person. This king, it's not just a person. Nothing helped. Until there was one wise man that came along and said, you know what? Give me a few days, I'll bring your king back. So they were curious, what's he going to do? What he did was, he started also acting like a chicken. He goes under the table, he starts doing kukuriku, and he starts becoming friends with the king that was also a chicken. So the people didn't understand, what's the point of it here? You're just making his illness worse. But then slowly but surely they saw that he's basically speaking to the king and starting to say, you know what? A chicken also sometimes wears his shirt. And a chicken can also sometimes sit on a chair. And he showed him how he sits on a chair. Slowly but surely he gave him all these behaviors like a human being. And then when the king was ready to hear, he told him, listen, you are really a king, and this is your position, etc. And that's how he cured him. What is the chokhmah of it here? What is his secret? He was able to give room to the other's feeling, to the other existence. So it's an extreme example, but sometimes we all behave like that kukuriku. Sometimes we all go a bit crazy and we turn the table upside down, or we go under the table, or we throw a chair here, or we throw a chair there, or we say a word that we regret afterwards. Why do we say that? One reason, because we want someone else to relate to who I am, to listen to me in my terms, to accept me as I am. And that is the biggest secret to being able to influence others. If you could understand the other in where he is, where he's holding, immediately he would relate to you because you accept him. One of the secrets of Chabad in Kiruv, in bringing people closer to Judaism, is the fact that we don't say we are the elite. This is how things should be, and you all have to follow my way. It's not going to work. That impression people get from any other part of the Jewish Orthodox world. The secret of Chabad is understanding that each and every Yid, no matter who they are, he is precious. He is special. There is something good to him. After you get to that point, he will be prepared to listen and to come closer and closer to Judaism like that king. So that is the secret of the Tzimtzum. The Tzimtzum, the light that Hashem puts into the world for the world to exist is a very small light. And that is for us not to nullify, because Hashem says, you know what? I want to hear what you have to say. So going back and trying to answer the questions that we started off with, how did Hashem create the world? He created it with a contraction. How does he allow bad to exist in the world? Unfortunately, when you contract yourself and you do not fill the room with your presence, yes, you might hear someone else that is not that pleasant, that he's bad, and you've got to take it. That's one of the risks. One of the risks are that not everything is going to be smooth. It's like the person that likes to control everything. If you control everything, yes, there won't be any mistakes or nearly any mistakes. If you give over the responsibility to others, you might have a few mistakes that will happen, that could happen. And it's so, so important to make sure that, A, we direct them. Not only we direct them, it's that we give room to who they are, to their feelings, etc. Okay, Yeshar Koach.